Okay.
You gotta leave at 5?
Seemed like the first few days they were amazingly pro forma, so maybe we try and.
Okay.
Just my sense based team. We had a game on Tuesday, rooted up, they let it end in a tie. And they canceled, so they moved us to our for today.
And the first few were all paid this square stuff, areas in like, try and get through those pretty.
And I can still. Oh. Okay, so we're recording, live streaming,
Ready?
working, but we're recording, so we can go ahead and get started.
Welcome, everyone, to the June 23rd installment of the UIDRB. Our next our next regular scheduled meeting is July 28th on Thursday evening. I would like to swear on the staff. Would you raise your right hand, please? You swear or affirm that everything you say will be the truth and whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I did.
Okay, great. I guess it's time to call the roll.
Yep. Mr. Fleming,
Here.
Mr. Gruder is absent today. Ms. Gunselman? Here. Ms. Jones? Here. Mr. Reeves?
Here.
Mr. Szymanski?
Here.
Ms. Juha Sauer?
Here.
Thank you.
Has everyone had an opportunity to review the meetings from the May meeting? Any corrections or comments? Hearing none, do I have a motion?
I move we approve. And I'll second.
Mr. Fleming?
Yes.
Ms. Gunselman?
Abstain.
Thank you. Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Reeves?
Yes.
Mr. Szymanski?
Yes.
Ms. Juha Sauer?
Yes.
Thank you.
I think I actually forgot, are there any people from the visiting public that have any comments that they'd like to make on a case tonight? Yes. Would you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. I think we're ready for our first case, are we not?
Yep.
That moves us to UID 22-03-0058.
So this is for 2259 North High Street. So 2259 North High Street is a contributing brick structure built in 1905 and is a part of a previous square development. Today, the applicant is seeking board approval for the following exterior modifications, and that's new limestone spheres atop existing masonry pillars, replacing all windows and all elevations using the vinyl silver lined V3 white colonial gridded double hung windows with low E glass, replacing the east and north elevation doors with Therma-Tru Steel Traditions wood end doors, replacing the east elevation front entry transom like for like with new address to match existing font and color, and replacing the north elevation side lights like for like. So the applicant last came to the board in March 2022 where the board continued the application so the applicant could consult with Columbus Landmarks for the existing preservation agreement. Since this time, the applicant has consulted with Columbus Landmarks and provided a letter outlining Columbus Landmarks' comments. For this project address, the letter notes that the proposed windows and doors are acceptable, that some existing doors may require replacement of only the existing glass with tempered glass, and to leave the partially painted areas of the home as is, so no repainting of them. Staff notes the landscaping, roof replacement, brick tuck pointing, replacing downspouts, replacing siding, replacing the metal window well, and painting the fascia, freeze molding, and trim have already been staff approved. The applicant does not believe that any of the items for a proposed replacement are original to the building, and that all items appear to be 30 to 40 years ago. Submitted materials include a site plan, hardscape plan, stone sphere detail, elevations, and material cut sheets. And if we look at those, so this is the letter from Columbus Landmarks, and it just talks about there's 5 houses basically that are on the agenda tonight, and they're all a part of the PV square homes. And so this letter addresses all of them regarding the scope of work. So you'll just kind of see there. The only building that really had concern was building 2283, but that's not on the agenda tonight, so we don't need to worry about that. So this is the site plan. So you can see we're starting with the first building here. This is just detailing the fencing, the pillars, the spheres. So that's sort of this hardscape plan. And then you'll see the detail here of the spheres and how they'll sit atop the pillars. This is the fencing detail that's applicable to some of the homes further down the street that we'll see. And then these are the 4 elevations for this home with the call out notes for the scope of work. So after review, the proposal is generally consistent with the recommendations of the plan. The plan recommends that high quality and durable materials be used, that original windows and doors be preserved, and that when replacement is necessary, the original design and proportion should be maintained. The plan also recommends that public, semi-public, and private spaces should be demarcated clearly through the use of landscape, walls, fences, gates, pavement treatment, signs, and other methods to denote boundaries and/or buffers. And as the application is generally consistent with plan guidelines, staff recommends approval. Thank you. And sorry, this says approved conditions. It should just say approval. It's a typo.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Would the applicant like to add anything to the city's overview?
No, we, talked to landmarks, everybody seems to be happy right now, so.
Okay.
I'll proceed.
Comments, anyone? Questions?
And they made landmarks happy. Seems to me, they're.
Keanu, could you speak up a bit, please?
I said if they made landmarks happy, then I don't have anything I need to.
Doreen?
Yeah, I think we're generally familiar with the building and have always appreciated the fact that so much of that could be saved. And I'm familiar with the agreement with Columbus Landmarks Foundation. So my question would have been about the review and what that entailed. So it seems consistent with what we hope for.
Okay. We have a motion.
I move to approve the application as submitted.
Second.
Mr. Fleming,
Yes.
Ms. Gunzelman,
Yes.
Ms. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Reed,
Yes.
Mr. Samansky,
Yes.
Ms. Uhasel.
Yes.
Thank you.
That moves us to UID 22-03-006A.
Yes. Okay, so this next one, and this is sort of abbreviated because it's very similar in scope, so we don't need to belabor it, but this is 2263 to 2265, so this is the next house. And essentially same contributing brick structure built in 1910, part of the KV Square development, and very similar scope of work. So the spheres on top of the pillars, replacing the windows, replacing the door, replacing the front entry transom, replacing the north elevation door, and then the two new things for this home are infilling the west elevation third floor door opening with wood trim panel and siding, and then replacing stucco stone like for like as needed. So same background, they came to Landmarks, they've talked to Landmarks about this. Any staff approval items have been approved, as noted here, same situation. And then their materials are pretty much the same. So, you have the site plan, the next house outline there, the same hardscape plan, the same details with the spheres. And then these are the floor elevations for this home.
Where's the,
Sorry?
where the infill said there's gonna be.
Oh, yeah, so it's in the upper left quadrant, so this is the west elevation. So you see this wood infill door here, they're going to basically fill that in and then just put siding over it to cover that up. So you
Used
see
to be a
that call
fire
out there.
escape, is that what that was?
On the roof, yeah, there's very little room to get out on, so we're not sure why there's a door.
Yeah, and staff did run this piece, while they were talking with Columbus Landmarks, I checked with our historic preservation officer, and he actually recommended the same thing, that it just be filled over with the type of siding. So it is kind of consistent with what we were hoping for. And, so after review, it is consistent for the same reasons as noted before, and staff recommends approval.
Thank you very much. Any additional comments? No? Any comments from members? Okay, you have a motion? No, I'm asking for a motion.
I would make a motion to approve the application as submitted.
Thank you. I will second.
Mr. Fleming,
Yes.
Ms. Gunzelman,
Yes.
Ms. Strong,
Yes.
Mr. Reed,
Yes.
Mr. Samansky.
Yes.
Ms. Uhosta.
Yes.
Great.
Moving quickly to UID 22-03-007A.
Again, we're just moving down the street here. So this is 2275 to 2279 North High Street. Same situation. So contributing structure built in 1910, P-square development, and the same scope of work. We have the spheres, replacing the windows, replacing the east elevation doors, and then replacing the front entry transit. Same background. They worked with Columbus Landmarks with the letter. There have been some items that have been already staff approved that are pretty straightforward. And then they have the same applications. We have that letter again. This is the middle house on the street, which is pointed out there. Same hardscape plan. And then here are the elevations for this one. We have two and then other two there. And then basically it is consistent with the plan for the same reasons as listed previously, and we recommend it.
Thank you very much. Yep. Comments on this one?
I move for approval.
And I'll second.
Right, Mr. Fleming,
Yes.
Ms. Gunzelman,
Yes.
Ms. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Reed.
Yes.
Mr. Samansky.
Yes.
Ms. Uhosta.
Yes.
Moving to UID 22-06-003.
So this is, moving on down, so this is 2285 North High Street. And same situation, built in 1810 for Phoebe Square. For this one, they're looking for new limestone spheres as well as new fence panels, so that's a different scope there. And those would be on top of existing retaining walls, and then also replacing the doors, and then there is some exterior painting involved with this one. Same background, so they have consulted with Columbus Landmarks, and then there have been some items that have already been staff approved. And then if we look at this one, same letter, here's the site plan with the home outline. And then this is the landscape or the hardscape plan. So you'll see here, they have the spheres and then those fence panels called out with those little arrows. And then the details for the spheres and the panels. And then this is the elevation, and this is showing the color scheme. So there's colors at the bottom and then there's numbers. And so it's sort of like, you know, the number matches the color. So that's the scheme. And Columbus Landmarks did note that they found the scheme appropriate and the location of the paint to be appropriate. And so after review, staff is supportive of this plan as well, for the reasons noted before. And recommend it.
Thank you very much.
This house was painted, so there's another color to paint. That's why this was getting painted.
So I have a question. The fence, is that a replacement of something in kind? And is it like, was there a fence there before that? So this matches what was there before?
Yes, it was a fence. And this is the same design as,
Okay, so that was my next question. They're all matchy as you go up the street. Okay. Okay. Are there any other questions or comments?
I have a question. On the elevation, it expresses a wood railing. Is that consistent with what Landmarks is requesting? 'Cause I thought I saw metal. That could have been for the fence. So I'm asking.
I believe in the rear, that is an existing wood fence. So I think it's just painting the existing, they're not changing it.
Okay. You don't have a photo of that by chance, do you?
Not on the.
Could we zoom in on Google Maps for view?
Sorry, I just
Might be able to see it.
that.
Yeah.
With that for, stuff to
I'm gonna see if I have a picture on my
see
phone.
in there.
I'm gonna see if I have a
Okay.
picture,
Okay.
and I'll forward it to her. 'Cause I
Thank you
have,
very much.
the-
While he's looking, are there any other comments or questions?
Your question, Laura, you just want to know if the railings are going to be painted or not?
Well, they're showing us wood on the elevation.
Mhm.
The railings on the front are metal. So I just want to make sure that that what's being described is what's there and that we are complying.
And so the front metal they are metal panel railings on the front side.
yes.
Okay, and then on the back porch here, those are going to be wood.
But they are wood.
They are wood, so
Yeah,
you're
they
going
always wanted to keep
to
them.
them in some way so they don't rot or something like that. Okay, so are you cool if they are wood, Lori?
Yes.
Okay. So it seems like we're okay then with
Okay.
the railing situation.
Do I have a motion?
I move for approval of the paint by number paintings.
I will second.
Picture they-
Mr. Fleming,
Yes.
Ms. Gentleman,
Yes.
Ms. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Reed,
Yes.
Mr. Samansky,
Yes.
Ms. Uhawski. Yes. Thank you.
Moving on to UID 22-06-004.
one is shockingly similar.
Yeah.
So this is 2289 North High Street. So this is the corner house now. Same situation, built in 1910, part of City Square. And then for this, they're looking for the limestone spheres, those new fence panels on the front elevation, replacing all the windows. And then again, the, as it was said, paint by number proposal. Same context, so they did consult Columbus Landmarks with the letter. It has been blessed by them. We have had some staff approvable items that were approved already. And then looking at the materials, we have the letter. And then again, noting this is the corner home. Same, plan with the call outs for the hardscape showing the spheres, panels, the fence panels. And then here are the elevations with the paint by number descriptions. And then there's the materials out. Zoom in if you need me to zoom in. Thank you.
Yep.
Oh, and staff, please recommend approval.
Okay. Any-
So anyway, this building was painted earlier, so they're just changing color.
Okay. Any questions, comments? No?
I can only say that this should solidify the fact that Dr. Pavey was enamored with Colonial Williamsburg. And I should have brought the photos of what the houses looked like originally so that you could appreciate it. But it will never quite be the same because the barn is gone in the back, which has the two Rolls Royces you would bring out from the driveway.
Wow.
So,
You didn't drive around, you just brought them out in the driveway?
no, he drove them around, but let me tell you, when your parents came to visit, you're a college student. Nothing told your parents that the neighborhood was safer than two Rolls Royces parked across the street. So,
And do the photo show porches on old houses?
they were big American four squares, typical four squares. And so
But with front porches on the
in
outside.
front, right, so they were very typical of the rest of the neighborhood. And the transformation, the landscaping, the use of the walls, the painted brick, everything reflected his love affair with Colonial Williamsburg, which would have never been approved by this board.
Yeah.
So, and this last house was his son's house, Chuck Pavey and Bonnie Pavey, who lived here their entire lives, went to North High School. So
Wow.
they're the landmark of the neighborhood.
Seems like a plaque is in order.
Yes, the plaque is in order.
Yeah.
We'll work on that. It has to be approved by landmarks, I'm sure.
As landmarks approve the homes and properties plaque.
So I would be happy to move for approval.
Second.
All right. Mr. Fleming,
Yes.
Ms. Gunzelman,
Yes.
Ms. Jones.
Yes.
Mr. Reed.
Yes.
Mr. Samansky.
Yes.
Ms. Lukasik.
Yes.
Thank you. You're good to go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I will add in passing that when we, for those of you who were not part of the original saving of the 5 buildings, besides the old farmhouse and the old corner grocery, the other piece that was really, would have been priceless to save was Dr. Pavey's original 1950s bomb shelter, which would have made a wonderful nightclub.
Thank you. Moving at record speed to UID 21-10-008. Did they miss their chance?
I did know it's 5:45. So I will note, the agenda says 5:45, and I do say that applicants should come, up to an hour before their proposed time, which would make it 4:45. I propose maybe we wait 10 or 15 minutes just
No,
to see.
no problem with that.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah,
great.
I think it's reasonable to wait a little bit. Having been on the other side, I would also say that everyone understands the times or guidelines and you show up early.
Especially.
We do staff approval.
Yeah.
Lovely idea.
It's a great idea.
Does anyone have any questions about the staff review application?
No.
No? Do I have a motion?
I move to approve the staff approved applications.
And I second.
Thank you. And Mr. Fleming,
Yes.
Ms. Gunzelman,
Yes.
Ms. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Reed.
Yes.
Mr. Samansky,
Yes.
Ms. Uhasa.
Yes.
Thank you. I will see if I have a phone number for the applicant. Give them a call.
So, yeah, you have a hybrid car, not an electric car.
Yes.
Great, yeah. Saw this fascinating article, so it was some stupid car site, undoubtedly, but that one complaint of like classic, your sports car, any cars, oh, they can't get full. But if the average person that owns any kind of classic car drives it 1,200 miles a year, and then you compare
Yeah.
the carbon footprint of the building of an electric car, you couldn't ever same level of pollution drives a classic car that amount. and build an electric car.
I mean, I think that's been out there for a while. I think you have to. So I can't speak to.
They have,
Okay, so we are recording again.
and we are ready for UID 21-10-008.
Oh, this has a reminder. Gary Lang.
At 5, right, yep. Right, so this site consists of 2160, 2180, and 2194 North Bay Street, as well as 9 through 15 Norwich Avenue and 25 East Norwich Avenue. So the site is located at the block bounded by North Bay Street to the west, East Norwich Avenue to the north, Pearl Alley to the east, and Lane Avenue to the south, with the exception of the lot on the corner of High Street and Norwich Avenue. 5 buildings are existing on the site, 4 of which are contributing buildings built between 1900 and 1915. Staff notes that the 4 existing contributing buildings are excellent examples of 20th century mixed-use design and are located on one of the few historic lots that remain intact on High Street. The 5 existing buildings include a CVS pharmacy, 2 brick 2 to 3 story contributing mixed-use courtyard buildings with commercial and multifamily uses known as Alhambra Court, 1 contributing brick 2-story apartment building, and 1 2-story contributing single-family home. Today, the applicant is seeking feedback on a conceptual proposal to demolish all of the site's existing structures. In their place, the applicant proposes to construct a 15-story or 168-foot mixed-use building and public plaza containing 215 units or 706 beds and a 228-space below-grade parking garage with a ratio of 0.32 spaces per bed. The building will step down from the 15th floor to 14 stories at 153 feet at the corner of Lane and High. The development will then step down to 7, 6, 3, and 2 stories moving north. The parking garage will be accessed from Pearl Alley with tall, transparent commercial lobby and leasing space on the first floor and residential units off of East Norwich Avenue. Floor 2 will contain residential units as well as study and amenity spaces. Floors 3 through 14 will contain residential units with floor 15 serving as an amenity penthouse. Residential typologies will include townhomes and studios up through 5-bed units. The site will include a landscape public plaza at the northwest corner accessed from both North High Street and East Norwich Avenue, as well as street trees and wide pedestrian space at the corner of Lane and High. The applicant last came before the board in May 2022 and presented a conceptual design that built a 6-story mixed-use building on the entirety of the site. The board voiced some preference for revitalizing and reusing the existing contributing buildings, but also expressed tolerance of demolishing the existing buildings in order to have a development that fits the scale of the neighborhood and expresses best architectural and city planning practices. Some members supported additional height at the corner of Lane and High that steps down moving north and east across the site. Board members also advocated for a mix of unit typologies and site programming that addresses the street and creates a gathering space, such as a plaza reminiscent of the Alhambra courtyard. In response to board feedback from the May meeting, the applicant removed any element of preservation and the use of the existing contributing buildings, located 15 and 14 stories at the corner of Lane and High that steps down moving north across the site to 2 stories, incorporated a variety of unit typologies, located a public plaza space at the northern portion of the site, incorporated street trees and landscaping, incorporated wide pedestrian space at the corner of Lane and High. And the submitted conceptual materials included vicinity map, existing building map, site plan, floor plans, west elevation, perspective views, and a context view. So in looking at those, here's the general map of the area. You have the existing buildings here with corresponding numbers. This is the site plan. So you can see on the northern portion of the site, this plaza that's accessed from East Norwich and High, and then with the building moving down, and then you see that parking is accessed off of the alley behind the building. Here you have the floor plans. So this is the second story underground of parking, first story underground of parking. This is at grade, so you'll see residential units off of East Norwich, a lot of ground floor retail space, as well as some leasing space and lobby space for the residential units. And then moving up, you'll see as I move up, the density focuses on the corner of Lane and High. So you have residential units here with amenity spaces, and then more residential units moving up. And then that's almost at the top. And then this is the what they're calling the amenity penthouse at the tip top. And so here's a section of the street. So you can see the height there and how it steps down moving north. And then this is a perspective looking northeast. Another perspective looking southeast. This is looking from at grade, looking southeast. And then this is really zoomed out, so you can see a context view looking southeast. So on sort of the right hand of the screen, that's OSU's campus with one of their tall dorms, and then you can run across and see the scale of their proposal and how it sort of fits into the rest of the neighborhood. So after review, the University District Plan recommends this site for regional mixed use, which recommends adaptive reuse and or expansion of contributing buildings, a minimum FAR of 1, max height of 72 feet, and parking at a rate of 3.75 spaces per bed for residential uses. The plan's design guidelines recommend preservation and rehabilitation of existing buildings, that new construction preserve and enhance the unique design characteristics of the district, that High Street and Lane Avenue continue as mixed-use corridors with the densest development, and that the design of new construction be compatible with the nearby contributing buildings and surrounding streetscape. Furthermore, the plan recommends that the impacts of the new building's height and mass be mitigated through the setback of higher stories along the front facade, that rear frontages higher than 35 feet be set back at least 20 feet from the property line, and that additional space for pedestrians adjacent to the public sidewalk be provided. Lastly, the plan recommends the use of high-quality, durable materials, inclusions of plazas, courtyards, seating, and other pedestrian amenities, and that landscaping and street trees be provided. Planning staff generally supports the proposal. Given the plan's recommendation of the preservation and rehabilitation of existing buildings, staff continues to recommend that the applicant include an element of preservation and rehabilitation on the site. Staff notes that the applicant is proposing 0.32 parking spaces per bed, which is slightly under the plan recommendation of 0.375 spaces per bed. Planning staff does recognize the elements of the proposal that are consistent with the plan guidelines and work to mitigate the increased height at Lane and High. Those include stepping the building down to the north to fit within the scale of the neighborhood, the mix of uses along the High Street and Lane Avenue corridors, tall, transparent first floor elevations, the inclusion of street trees and landscaping, and the wide pedestrian space at Lane and High and the public plaza, which gives nod to the existing Alhambra courtyard. So as the proposal continues to develop, staff recommends a creative screening treatment of the parking garage additional bicycle parking beyond what is required by code, and that high-quality durable materials be used. And staff notes that upon a future request for action, additional materials including a dimensioned and a scale site plan, building elevations, floor plans, landscaping details, and exterior material details and cut sheets will be needed to review the consistency with plan recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. Would all those on the applicant side that wish to speak, please raise your right hands. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Jill Tangeman of Board Sanderson One Piece. Thank you for having us back
Could
again.
you use the microphone?
Oh, I'm sorry. There we go. Is that better?
Yep.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Jill Tangeman with Board Sanderson One Piece. And we appreciate the opportunity to come back before you. I'm going to really turn it over to Bhakti, who will talk about the change in design and how we've tried to hopefully address comments made at the last meeting. We all felt like last meeting was really productive in trying to come to some conclusions about how to work with this site. And we're hoping that we can walk away today with your support so we can go back and do the detail work that needs to be done to get your formal approvals. So I'm going to turn it over to you. You address some of the specifics.
Thanks, Jill. Hi, good evening. So our clients were unable, is that better? My client was unable to attend because their flight was canceled, so they are on a Teams call. So at any point, if we wanted them to speak, we can, I believe that you have to see them and hear them at the same time for it to be. So I just wanted to tell you that option is available and they're here. So thanks again for all of the really great feedback we got. I feel like last month we got a lot of informative feedback that we were really able to go back and kind of do a lot with. So we can kind of maybe pull out the site plan. So yeah, to go back to, what Belkis talked about earlier, we really kind of wanted to look at what we can do. We've always done versions of it by keeping some parts of the building, and we were trying to now do what we really wanted to do with the site if we really took that building out, but also did the stepping down and all of those things that we've been talking about. So one of the things we did obviously was to step the building down from 14 to 7 to 3 and then really 2 stories up on Norwich. We also thought it would be really nice to kind of create, sort of recreate a public plaza, but that's much more accessible and oriented more towards the residential corner of the site, which, in my opinion, is kind of the High and Norwich corner. I feel like the Lane and High is more the commercial end of the project. So that's why we kind of pushed that there. We've also reduced the density of the project at that point. The 2-story is residential. The 3-story just south of the plaza is a mixed-use building, so it has commercial on the first floor. And then, maybe there's a view that shows that better. I think there's one more. Yeah, that one shows it better. So as you can see, it steps, from the 2-story that sits behind the existing building, the plaza that's accessed from Norwich as well as High Street, really connecting, activating that space as some of that retail with residential above. And then it goes on to the 7-story building, which then goes on to just the corner kind of 14-story building that we're proposing. So we created the step down. Another thing we did was really kind of pull the building in from the property line. So if we look at the site plan, we were really focusing on the corner of Lane and High. So even from Lane Avenue, we have created a little bit more of a pedestrian experience. Anything you see dark gray is really kind of within the property line. So you're seeing where we've kind of held the building back a little bit to create some sense of a public plaza where we can have good interventions with landscaping and things like that. As well as on, obviously the public plaza that we talked about just now at the corner of Lane and High and Norwich. Which I think is really one of those spaces that will be activated and sort of be reminiscent of, the Alhambra Court green space, but I think in some ways different, obviously, but also with a commercial presence there. So it's not just residential. We also actually have held the building back from Pearl Street to reduce some of that effect of the building on it. by, somewhere it ranges between 10 to 15 feet on that facade. So that kind of also eases some of that building massing on fall. So as we go into the building itself, like I said, we've created the step down, we've created opportunities for landscaping within important intersections of the site itself. One of the things we wanted to kind of reference again as we go to the intersection of Lane and High, with the height of the building, the 14 stories there. It is 14, and then we kind of have this amenity roof deck element, which, the location of that is sort of temporary. We may move it at some point, or reassign how it sits on the roof deck, but it essentially is a 14-story building. And as you zoom out to that context view, you start to see some of the buildings that are taller along Lane Avenue, specifically Taylor Tower, which sits right there. And so that is a 14-story building that's just a few blocks west of us. So, you start to see contextually as you're going down Lane Avenue, this height is something that Lane Avenue does, you do see in Lane Avenue. And if you go further down, you do have additional taller buildings as you go down further on Lane Avenue. So we think, contextually, I think coming down from the 17 that we were at, the 14 for us feels like a better scale for the corner as well. We are showing some articulation only for, kind of the understanding of the scale of what those building elements could be and things like that. And wanted to kind of look at it from different perspective, not just from, the immediate context, but also the larger context of the building itself. So I think that's covering everything that we wanted to present. We do have, one of the thing I wanted to point out was we do have a variety of unit types within the project as well, going from sort of a walk-up townhouse type piece that's on Norwich to sort of, smaller flats in the 2-3-story version to more, conventional kind of student housing apartments in the 7 and the 4-story building. With that, I would like to open it up for any questions and discussions.
Go for Ryan.
And I apologize that I believe, I'm just gonna speak for myself. I think it's a step in the general right direction. The one thing that caught mine from Belkis, and as I know it's been a big thing in there, is the parking and the size of that as it compares to the history. The parking in the University District has varied, and there was a big move and a give on the area commissions and all that to move to this 0.375. And there's also retail related to that. And I understand it's a walking retail on that, but you have workers, you have all that. And so I would say that you guys really need to study that parking a little bit more to understand that going below 0.375, not accounting for retail and all that. I think your density is a little too much for what you can get parking. And if you can get more parking, then that's great. But I think pushing those limits lower is something that I would like to see improve. From a general, the massing, is 14 or 13 or, I'll let, my counterparts comment more on that. I think this is a better step in the direction of stepping down, creating public space, both at Lane and such. So that's my comment, Jim.
Thank you.
Can't hear you, Bill.
Do we have any speakers from the public?
I forgot. Are there any members of the visiting public that would like to make comments on this proposal? Seeing none. Who would like to
Do you
go?
want to go and start on that end?
Oh.
Bring this up.
Yeah, I concur with Ryan. I think it's definitely improved compared to the previous versions. I think the handling, the staffing acknowledges the change of scale on the site. I think you've made a pretty decent case for the height on the corner, treating it in a way that I think is makes sense relative to the other tall buildings on Lane. And I appreciate that you pulled it off the property line to provide some breathing room down at grade. I will say, I think the articulation is a little bit of sleight of hand to sort of reduce the apparent height of the big building by treating the cladding as 2 and 3 story, but whatever, that's fine. That's what architects do. I mean, I think I'm not as bothered by the parking count. I mean, honestly, I would support the reduced ratio, because I think while I understand, sympathize as a former resident of the area, but the parking, I think the city is getting denser, and sometimes the way you encourage people to use alternate modes of transportation is you don't build a future. I think the one sort of comment I have is, I wonder what, it's not much, it's sort of a bone in the way of preservation. But the little 2-story building you're adding at the very northeast corner, whether you don't just keep the original one that's there now. I don't see what you're getting a whole lot.
That is
It's not.
No, it's not.
you're adding that in the plan.
Yeah, they're definitely in the existing row house. I mean, they're replacing with something similar.
Oh, that one, sorry. I was looking at the corner.
I mean, so I think the two comments, I don't know what that really gets you. And if you had left it on the corner, it's a little bit of a bone in terms of preservation, but it's something. And also when you build an elevated plaza like that over a parking deck, you're never going to get trees like you're showing in the rendering. So, maybe this is to my point about supporting a lower ratio. If you pull the basement parking to the northern wall retail, and north of that was unexcavated, and you have left the existing building alone on the corner, you might be able to get a plaza that supports bigger trees, and you might sort of, make the site might retain a little more of the existing fabric rather than being 90% tabula rasa. I mean, having said that, I think the direction in general is the right one. And, I'm on the same page with Mark.
Certainly.
So thank you for the description and the risk taking to go in a completely different direction. I think that's important to see that you're willing to continue to examine all options. And you did a great job of explaining your urban strategy. What I'd like to hear from you is to describe your architectural concept. What do you see here as the opportunity as an architectural intervention in the city? And what is your architectural response to the urban corner, to the campus area, to the historic nature of the city, to opportunities for innovation and novelty?
I think we look at it sort of as an intersection / gateway, right? So, I mean, definitely as you're coming south on High Street, it kind of is your first sort of university corner, you want to call it. And so I think that corner has a more of a commercial kind of a feel to it. As you go north on the side, I think you do want to get a little bit more of the residential historic fabric of the neighborhood. And when I say historic, I mean more in terms of scale and materials, not so much as in looking like, yeah. So I think in terms of how we design it, I think we're looking at, kind of using that as the transition, using those tools to transition. That's why it's a black and white rendering, because we're still exploring materiality and things like that. But I think that would be how we would potentially transition from it being, a little bit more related and connected to the residential look and feel and texture and color along Norwich. And then as it transitions over, it may be a little bit more contemporary in its materials and in its, it's a high rise. So it obviously has a different set of tools that it would have compared to, the immediate context. Architecturally, the other thing, I mean, the corner, we've purposely kind of created kind of just a little soft edge to it, pushing the building back by creating a little bit more plaza space. Activating that corner, I think, is going to be really important, with maybe some additional, as we study it, some more kind of interesting pedestrian experiences there, but also activating it with how we create entrances into those retail spaces. Those will become really important to study, make those kind of very differentiated and also cohesive in the sense of like that it is, accessible and easy and easy and inviting. There is obviously an element of a residential entry that we would differentiate from the commercial spaces. But I think those are kind of that next level of study that I think for that corner, the pedestrian experience is important. And as you go north, I think it is pedestrian, but it's also the buildings start to speak a little bit more to the character of the neighborhood architecture.
Thank you. So the residential setback that I'm seeing on High Street is the door to the residential tower or to a commercial area?
That on the corner of on High Street,
Right.
that would be an entry into the retail spaces.
To the retail spaces. Okay, so if I live in the 12th floor of that tower, where's my door?
Elkis, could you go to the floor plan? It's actually right in the middle of the
It's
facade.
the block on
layout.
Lane.
Right.
Yeah.
The green that you see on Lane.
Right.
Oh, on High Street, that's kind of a secondary exit for, students that may want to run down the
So
stairs.
the green is
Yeah.
my
But
door.
the green is your
That's
main
the-
door,
okay.
on Lane Avenue.
Yeah, and I mean, I understand all that is to be worked out, and you're looking at from urban point of view to balance a lot of these things. I want to go back to the way you described what you're thinking about architecturally. And maybe this is what Keone was saying, I didn't hear clearly, but for me, there's this, to me, that doesn't have the integrity of a great architectural idea. That's what I'm looking for you to articulate and to begin to show through a design process. We can come in and make various aesthetic suggestions, but what does it really mean? It should really be your overall overarching big aesthetic idea that will convince us, right? It's not us move windows this, move that line there. And I think for me right now, it fails in the same way Gateway fails, is that it's so many little parts, layers and so on, that looks like it's meant to try to be as though many different architects had hands in it when it's just one big thing with pastiche. And I think that's where I see the potential for your work on this site to be a stronger idea and a stronger language of architecture and less piecemeal, bigger statement, more beautiful work of architecture. I know you're fighting with materials. I liked what you said about the investigation for you as a facade study right now is more contemporary materials. It's really not about replicating anything that's already there because there are so many different things and none of them really speak to a large architectural idea in my mind right now. So I think to go then from there to your urban argument for the kinds of things you're trying to do with this iteration relative to where you've been in the past, I'm less sympathetic than my colleagues to say that this is somehow moving in the right direction. It's different, but I find some really significant problems right now. You're showing shading on the north sides of facades, but you're not showing the shading on High Street. And for a large part of the morning, High Street is going to be black because the towers are tall enough, shadows are going to cast all the way across the street. The argument that you're making for the new plaza to me is illogical. So I think the potential of making good urban space, like if you say part of our architectural gesture with an urban sensibility is to say, we're going to make some really great social public space. And then to say the way you've done that is to create a small rooftop, narrowing space on the north side of a 3-story building. That's going to be in shade all the time. And why? Why put the public space in the neighborhood? Why wouldn't the public space be on Lane Avenue? Why wouldn't you push the whole massing forward? Give all that space to the street. We look at the attempts that have been made along High Street to create outside social cafe front stuff. Chick-fil-A, it's not working, right? But if you have that opportunity here to really have commercial space that supports sidewalk space in a really dynamic, active area, that as a driver for your architectural response seems great. So why would you tuck a small angled piece way on the north side that's going to be in shade all the time and not use the opportunity to make that a civic social gesture? To me, that seems like low-hanging fruit. I feel like the way you're stepping down toward the neighborhood, I appreciate and I respect that you've looked a lot at how to get the 14 stories to different ways. I think that investigation needs to go further. Because I think you're not yet achieving what could be the most successful urban gesture and you're kind of piecing it in small, insignificant ways, when there's still a potential to do something much more meaningful. Does that make sense?
Doreen?
You never want to follow KB when she starts talking. She's so eloquent. First of all, I want to say that I appreciate the fact that I think you always have listened very carefully on projects that we have worked with you. And it's apparent that this also reflects that. You do listen, you do hear. And I think you try to interpret what we are feeling, maybe more than, or sensing more about a design. I'm going to be more realistic, I guess, in sort of the process here. The number of variances this project right now would probably need is really something that this board does not necessarily deal with, but it would be dealt with on the area commission. And the number of variances that would take, parking being obviously one, height will be another, will perhaps in some ways not be as amenable to what is presented as of tonight. We know that we're all in a process, and this, I don't want to say this is negotiation, but I would tend to think that the community reaction overall with the area commission, which is both our stakeholder partners and the constituents of 4 districts, that this corner is so important and so visible to everyone who enters and leaves the university district, that right now there are not enough carrots to swing a support for this. Much more eloquent about it. In a way, and maybe it's just the words actually as reflected here, there still is no sense of a preservation design element. The idea of a public space that space that is tacked on as the nod to historic, to the historic Alhambra Port. I really felt that in May, when we talked about this, that we were really kind of moving forward, because I did think you had some really good sense about the preservation direction, which was possible. And I thought that the following month, kind of audience, that you could definitely take national recognition out of this. And so I guess I'm encouraged by one hand because of what I'm seeing, and you do listen, but I still see it is going to be a very difficult process for the variances to get through because of the height of the building on the corner and the parking variances alone, much less I have no other ideas about line of sight or using the parking garage, on Pearl Alley, all of that yet to be worked out. So I'm not sure I've been very helpful, but I'm just trying to be honest about where I think some of the difficulties will be.
I think the one thing I would just as a point of clarification.
Can't hear you, Ken.
I can't hear you, Ken.
I think the one thing I would note as a point of clarification is that the University Area Commission and this board both vote in support or lack thereof of zoning variances, but neither has the authority to approve or deny. So I just want to be clear, we have equal standing with the UAC, and neither of us can actually approve or deny.
But in looking at the process holistically, it has to be taken into consideration. And because both things are integrated with each other. And generally, I think we've worked very well together in trying to understand and bring both the design and the actual variances required in alignment with each other. And I think that's what happened when we looked at projects on King Avenue, or we had discussed the Pavey block most recently before you entered. We were looking at those, and we looked at them as two boards not in sync, but respectful of each other and the opinions that we tried to help direct the development for.
Thank you for the presentation. And obviously I'm new to the project, being new on the board, but one of the first things I noticed about the project, you are at the gateway of the university, let's face it, Lane and High, it's just one of those special moments that you really have an opportunity to do something amazing here. I'm a little concerned about how the height of the building as you're moving east on Lane Avenue, how does that address the neighborhood? No one's really talked about that. That is goes back down into a residential neighborhood that no one's really addressed. I do appreciate the fact the building is stepping down towards the residential neighborhood towards the north. It's almost like an exclamation point as you go north, and it is the capital A as you move in, or capital T, capital the. Let's say it is the university coming south.
Yep.
Right?
All over again. I have it on a t-shirt now.
And it's funny, I was also very happy that I didn't have to follow KB because she's obviously very eloquent in everything that she has stated. But I do, one of the things I looked at, I thought, wow, this looks like, several different architects designed the buildings. And I wonder if there's an opportunity to really understand how there are variations of a whole that can create the same effect without creating three very distinctly different types of buildings to allow the design to evolve in that sort of way. I kind of agree. I was a little stumped by the plaza to the north. And then the new building residential without the idea of a preservation of at least one of the structures that would really help give you a lot of maybe some common ground with people that are concerned about the preservation of the projects that are there that are being taken down as a suggestion, a proposal. And then again, sort of what we do with the Pearl Street and how we're addressing sort of the back of the building with the neighborhood. There is residential that is there on the northeast corner that I don't feel like we're really addressing at all. And I realize this is probably early still in the planning stages, but I think that's also an interesting corner that needs to be thought about.
If you could go to the kind of perspective, as a non-architect, I have a different view of the architecture on this, in the sense that what I like about recognizing this is just kind of a massing study, a little bit beyond that, but your last building, I think there's a tendency to, if you've got a long building, architects do all these things to make it interesting. So it's like it goes in a foot, it comes out a foot, it's a brick here and it's sided there. And I think at least this, I think it should be 4 different buildings, which I have no problem with. The way I see this is you set this up as the signature building is on the corner, and the other ones are gonna pay homage to that. So that, the spectacular thing is kind of anchoring the university on that corner, and then the balance of them again do something else. I don't disagree with. I mean, they need to speak to one another. So again, KB can please rescue me, but I'm not put off by the fact that they need to look like, even if they were designed by the same architect. I really, Having said that, if they're done genuinely, where you're not trying too hard, that they need to be unique and beautiful in their own right. The courtyard, I'm kind of torn on that. It's clearly not going to function the way the Alhambra did. I'm also concerned that if you didn't have the right tenant in the far corner, I'm really concerned about how well retail would ever do in that. Because it's like gateway all over again. It's just like, when you bury retail like that, I think it really, really struggles. So I would be concerned about that. I agree with KB that, you know, is that the right spot? You know, maybe not. I think it was your project. If anyone had ever studied a plaza that's kind of parallel to High Street, so it's like, you know, is that the place to do it? Is it, you know, as opposed to Lane? I think it should just consider it, so. I think it's a land.
I guess one other thing I was thinking about is the way the corner functions now, it really became the entrance to the residential, to a heart of a neighborhood. And there was a timeless quality about that. It's not as if everyone had access to that courtyard, but it was the green space that was so important to actually see visibly. In fact, this idea of finding green spaces between the community and the university that become the point of almost like wayfinding that appeal to the alumni who continue to support the university because they can still see remnants of the generational evolutions of the area, much less the residents themselves. These are very important, and that's why I'm saying it's not going to be a public space in quite the same way that's viewed maybe more from a distance. But there was a timelessness about it, and I don't get that sense here. I don't get that sense that this is now the gateway into a community that has its origins in 1840. The original Old North Columbus went down to Waldeck Avenue and was plotted out as that. And of course, that's not going to exist still. We see it in the commercial of the Old North Columbus around Arcadia and Hudson, but we don't necessarily get that same view here. But I think you know also that this is up against historic districts on every corner, and the Pavey block, which was certainly the lightning rod for preservation in the area. Somehow, I don't get the feeling it's connected to what you're going to see going up High Street more. And I guess maybe I'm looking for something that's going to have that timeless quality that invites you in to the rest of the community. I have no doubt that you will work with good materials and you have great attention to detail. And I guess that's why I'm going to say one more time, sort of pathetically here, it just seems bitterly ironic that a company named Landmark is going to scrape the earth for something that the community considers a landmark. So we hope the design has the attention to detail that we hope it would.
Do you have questions?
Yeah, just, I guess, maybe just a few. Going back to comments that I heard, one of the things that we do want to do, and, you know, sorry, can you hear me? We had maybe 2 weeks since the last meeting to turn around this scheme. So, you know, obviously we have a lot more to explore with the design and the details and kind of our overall, this is kind of a glimpse of our approach, if I could say that, and we will develop this and, you know, all of those things are fine. But I think to really move the project forward, we need to have some sense of, you were right to point out, we have variances that we need to go to different boards to present, to go back to whether it's council or BZA. So in order for us to get to the steps of figuring out the design of the building, we at least need some kind of a acknowledgement from you, if you would support it, so that we can, in fact, continue to develop the design of the buildings, but also continue to move the project forward from a zoning and variances standpoint. So
What are you asking us to support?
I'm asking if conceptually you are willing to say yes for us to move this to set up a meeting with the.
And I think it's primarily, around our variances. And I think we're talking about its height and parking.
We have height and parking, and then this is C4, so technically if we put any residential, even if it is keeping the existing residential on the first floor, we would need a use variance, is that right, Wilkes? Yeah, so we're basically looking at a use, and I don't see anything other than those two variances, parking and height are the two that we would need.
So I think that, you know, we need some, you know, guidance from you if those are things you can't or can support, so that we know where we are headed.
And we can,
That, for me, they're not independent of the design. So I don't have a hard, fast, no, absolutely, you can't get variances for those things. Personally, I can see any variance, and that's why it's a variance. Any rule can be broken if it's done so for the right reason. So what I think, I don't know if that, answering that question, I mean, you're gonna come forward with something anyway, right? You're gonna keep trying. So I don't think us saying yes or no to anything is useful at this point around that question. You're gonna keep trying, right? Maybe for Ryan, getting to 0.365 would be okay. I don't know, you know. What I'm saying is quite different from that, which is that you're struggling to find an architectural idea that responds really well to some well thought out urban conditions. But what we know from most architecture is they don't answer every urban problem to get the right answer, right? It does some things really well that gets 75% of the people on board because it makes the city better for those dwellers, but somebody's always going to be opposed, right? So I think that's where the search here is really more along the lines of continue to take risks, keep trying to do something that's not going to fit into the ideal envelope that gets everybody on board. It's not going to happen. But instead, like as I'm looking at this, I know there are some other potential solutions that come to me when I look at, I don't know, Jeannie Gang's dorms at the University of Chicago, much taller than anything else around it. Beautiful works of architecture that you want to see from a distance. She sold it by showing those amenity spaces at the top from which you could see Lake Michigan. And it's completely out of scale of the zoning of the rest of that area of the campus. Or other, you know, dense urban neighborhoods where somebody came in with an architectural intervention that's really quite risk-taking, quite different. It's not just trying to slip itself in there and be unobtrusive. A 14-story tower on that site is going to be obtrusive. Own it. Make it so great that we want it, right? Or get it down to 7.5 stories where we can kind of see a setback that works. I don't think that the question, the answer to that question is not the solution. Do you see what I'm saying? I think there are lots of potential precedents. This is not an unusual circumstance, right? In contemporary, medium-sized, urban, town gown campus conflicts. There are tons of solutions out there. And so I think that's where finding something that you own and you come in, maybe next time you come in with 3 very different proposals, each one you see as being architecturally strong, viable, and potentially really rich. But it's not just this one thing that follows this envelope. Right? I think what you're looking for, you're trying to do everything okay. And I want to see you do one thing really well, so well that we can put up with a lot of other, relatively speaking, change. Now, that doesn't address what my colleagues have more articulately talked about, which is really, how do you see the history of the neighborhood? The history of the neighborhood is real. The history is important. The hit quality, and that's where we keep coming back to your brilliant solution on the Pavey project of kind of being a both and I don't know if that's applicable here, but some way of saying, look, here's how we understand the legacy of this site, this campus, this residential neighborhood, this history. This legacy for us is important. What we can do to honor that legacy is this, and it's not a pastiche. It's not a painting over of something that ever looked like the past, but it's somehow honorific or recognizable or bringing forward something that tells us how you understand that. So in a way, what I keep seeing is something that's generic that could be almost anywhere, and it's just rubbing up abrasively against the edges of things it doesn't want to have to deal with. Instead of something that's much more positive and forward thinking about saying, change is coming, and this change is going to be so great.
I think what would be nice to see would be a diagram that addresses just a couple of really simple things, like this is how the project addresses public open space. This is how the project addresses history in some manner, and then scale. So it doesn't have to have, it's not about building materiality. It's just it could be a plan diagram for all I care. This is just basically, this is how we're addressing these 3 things. And I don't disagree with KB, in the sense that, I don't think the entirety of every project has to be spectacular. I think there needs to be, some of it just needs to function well and certainly fit in. But I think there's, given the position of this geographically, I think it's got the opportunity to do something really spectacular, which is, again, is not to say that the entire thing has to be that, but I think it's got a lot of potential.
I think, as I said, I think the general direction is in the right direction for me. I think the bulk of the mass to the south of the site makes sense. I think the stepping to the north, it's not really a public plaza per se. And Kara's right, you'll have trouble with potential retail spaces in the back corner, but I think opening up a green space to the north that provides some relief on the block is good. I mean, at the end of the day, I think it's early, and I think there's plenty of opportunity to develop an architectural strategy. And frankly, bricolage exists. There are architects that do buildings out of compositions where each piece doesn't look like the other. Everyone from Frank Gehry to Michael Graves. So I think there are plenty of ways to kind of deal with the pieces and to get the pieces to make architectural sense. And let me be frank. You're not going to get greatness on the site on a developer's performance. And right now, frankly, with escalation being what it is, it's hard to get, greatness anywhere unless you have deep pockets like, the University of Chicago. But, again, at the end of the day, I think what I want is something like goes in there, at a bare minimum, doesn't leave the neighborhood worse off than it is. So I think I think I was reasonably clear. I think this is a direction that I think has been, of everything we've seen to date, is by far the most productive.
I feel as though I could be supportive of the project. I do feel that we need to address some of the things that we already made comments on. I am a little concerned about the parking ratio. I know that is something that's always a sticky wicket, but maybe encouraging might be helpful for the project to alleviate some of those concerns. And I concur that with material escalation and cost, that it is difficult to create a design that with a great wow factor, but I still think it can be done in a way that is articulated well and has a good design prowess for the corner there.
I just wanted to clarify one thing on the parking. The 0.3 is just the residential. The retail has been accounted with the parking. So it's not that we're missing the retail.
It's okay.
This is a minor thing. I don't want to say it gets some variances, but I would account it for it more on the retail side and assume that the commercial parking, you find street parking and stuff. I mean, the pressure in the district is, on evenings when everyone's at home and everything's all parked up. In the middle of the day when people are at work and are gone, it's less of an issue. Come on. I mean, is Columbus City a city or is it not a city? If it really wants to be a city, then, when I go to New York and I drive my car, I look for street parking or garage. I don't pull into development expecting, assigned spaces in the building. So I think if you're trying to finesse the numbers on the parking ratio, I think I would do it for the residents so that, at the end of the workday or on a Sunday morning, you weren't overloading the.
Just give us a second to just ask our clients if they've got any further questions. I think we're advanced. We've got what we had and wanted to answer.
No further questions.
Appreciate the feedback.
Great. All right, well, thank you. We appreciate your time. and,
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Diagrams. Isn't just for the diagrams help not only for, but. Village. For a different desire before. That's all right, that's all right. Doreen was kind enough to share with me.
Must have voted out the wrong.
Yeah.
It's happened to me to see the screen.
Yeah, so I think from here we can adjourn, right?
Oh, yes, I think we are
So
done.
it's 5:38, right? And we're adjourned?
Yes,
Okay,
thank you.
Thanks.
you.
For being so efficient.